Beliefs are incredibly powerful. Beliefs drive our actions. They drive what we do every day. In fact, we do recognize the power of beliefs. We think about how beliefs have driven certain visionaries to change the world for the good. At the same time, also, we have recognized that beliefs can lead people to commit great atrocities. In fact, at this very moment, the wars that are being fought, sadly, different countries of the world at this very moment, the hate crimes that are being committed are so reprehensible. And even just the general unrest and tension that we've seen, they've all emanated from the beliefs of certain people, certain groups. And that's how powerful beliefs really are. Yet despite recognizing the power of beliefs, I don't think we spend enough time recognizing our own beliefs. Or more specifically, the question I was really thinking about today is, how do we know whether we've got good beliefs? How do we know whether our beliefs are not extremist like the ones we see in the world? How do we know that our beliefs are not defective? And this really is a good question, because it turns out, as I really looked into this, not enough thinkers actually spend time exploring beliefs, which is so surprising, isn't it? You look at philosophy as a whole field, comparatively speaking, there isn't much philosophy about beliefs compared to all these other topics out there. And perhaps that's why bad beliefs have been able to perpetuate so much and for so long in society. And really, the social forces of society right now are being driven by beliefs. And even on the personal level, your life is being determined by your beliefs. So what makes a belief bad? What makes it extremist? What makes it defective? Now, after exploring this area, come to two conclusions that generally formulate the equation of what makes an extremist belief and therefore a defective belief. I think the first general consensus that we all have is, we would say somebody has an extremist or bad belief when that belief is not up to our moral standards. So for example, we would say that racist beliefs are bad because it's immoral to be a racist. Or quite similarly, it is wrong to believe that you can mug somebody today just because you believe that person struggles less than you. That is immoral, and therefore that is a bad belief. And of course, you can imagine so many others. We hold beliefs up against a moral standard. And although most of us might agree that is it, that is what makes a belief extreme and bad, when you carefully examine that equation, it is very problematic, because to hold somebody, to hold an individual morally accountable, that individual also has to be in control of the actions. And generally, when we are speaking about actions, that's very straightforward. That link is easily established, that link of control. Now, to give you an example, if I told you today, let's have fun. If I told you today that I will give you $1 billion right now, I will give you that money if you simply just wave at me at this very moment. Now, for those of you who are waving along with me, hopefully you don't look too silly. You're doing it because you want the money, but you're in control of your hands. You're waving to me. You have decided in your mind to wave to me. You are fully in control of that, and you can commit to this action. Now, quite similarly, let's imagine in a more Machiavellian, villainous way. If I said to you, I will give you $1 billion if you go and commit a crime. I want you to go steal a lollipop from a baby, which honestly is very terrible, but imagine that. Now, if you did that because you really want that $1 billion, again, you are in control. You've decided to go out there, find a baby, find a child, and steal the lollipop. That was immoral of you to steal the lollipop from the baby, because it's immoral to bully a baby, at least according to most of the moralities of most society. But that is it. There is an element of control. But what about beliefs? Now, this is very interesting. Imagine if I told you that I'll give you $1 billion if you believe, truly believe, that you're not human, that you're jellyfish. Now, you can act and commit to the action of pretending like you're jellyfish, which I hope you're not doing that right now, because it'll be very odd. But no matter what you do, you can't truly believe in your mind that you are a jellyfish. You can try and delude yourself, but there's no way you can truly believe that, because you know you're not a jellyfish. You know you are a human being. You're in the body of a human. Unless, unfortunately, you are plagued by some sort of a psychological, psychiatric illness, there's no way you can actually believe that you're a jellyfish. You can only pretend and act like one. So if we can't truly control beliefs in the same sense that we can control actions and truly commit to them with conscious willpower, then what really is the element of the equation that makes a belief bad or extremist? And after much thought, I realized it really comes down to evidence. You see, if today your belief does not line up with the evidence of society, then arguably we would say that your belief is extremist or defective. For example, a racist belief is an extremist belief, a defective belief, because it doesn't line up with the evidence. When you think a certain race has more propensity to be of a certain way, that does not line up with the evidence that people of any race can be of any propensity. They're not necessarily limited by their skin. There are all sorts of people out there, and it's extremely defective to think that just because a person is of a certain race, they will be exactly the way you think they are. Quite similarly, we could also say, in terms of having the belief that you have a right to mug somebody, it doesn't line up with the evidence. When you think that you struggle more than them, that person may be struggling in their own ways, or perhaps even struggling more than you. It does not give you a right to mug them. To believe otherwise is questionable and defective. And I think when we think about it from that sort of equation, we can also see how beliefs can be defective. Yet this consideration, when you really think about it, also doesn't really cut it. Although we might say a good belief is based on evidence, the truth is, some of us simply just don't have enough evidence. For example, a person might have a lot of racist beliefs because they may have lived in a hamlet that's been secluded from the whole world. They've only seen their own races, and therefore the evidence available to them is just that. We might understand why they might be racist for having these beliefs, because after all, that's all the access they had in terms of the evidence that they had. Or even more extreme, imagine a terrorist group that is trying to radicalize their recruits, and they withhold certain evidence, and they may succeed in radicalizing these people in basically plotting beliefs in their head. But we can't hold these people culpable because, again, they've been brainwashed. That is literally all the evidence they had available to them. What truly is the element that makes a belief bad that we can learn from? Because as much as we easily conclude it's based on morality, it's based on evidence, these two formulations are flawed. They don't really explain the defectiveness of the people who believe in these things and how we can recognize whether we have these defectiveness. And it's really here that I think I found the answer. Because recently I was reading the text of this great thinker from the 9th to 10th century in Baghdad, one of the greatest thinkers of Islam, a person by the name of Abu Nasr Al-Farabi, who contributed so much wisdom in the Islamic Golden Age. Generally recognized for his contributions to logic, his work has also shaped political philosophy and the thoughts of so many through the centuries. Now, Al-Farabi wrote about something very interesting about knowledge. In essence, he argued we don't really have perfect knowledge. Specifically, he wrote that us mortals, we are limited by the knowledge that we have of the world. The only being that has absolute knowledge is the Prophet Muhammad. Whereas us mortals, we only know so much available to us. We never have that absolute omniscience that is only attributable to the Prophet or God in his religion. And those of us that think with so much ignorance that we have absolute knowledge, we are elevating ourselves up to the level of God. Now, of course, Al-Farabi wrote about it in very specific context, but there is actually so much wisdom in the way he thought about our accumulation of knowledge, which ultimately also relates to our beliefs that we have in our lives. Because perhaps the problem with belief is not so much limited to morality or just to evidence. What makes a belief bad, defective, and extremist comes down to certainty. And we can really deconstruct the thoughts of Al-Farabi in a mathematical sense. See, in Bayesian mathematics, there's a concept of degree, where we have a spectrum of degree from 0, or 0.1, being the lowest on the spectrum, all the way to 1, which is absolute. And of course, this mathematical model is for measurement, but we can apply that to this issue of belief. What I mean is, we should look at our beliefs and compare it against a spectrum of how much we believe in something. In the same sense that Al-Farabi talked about people believing they have absolute knowledge. Nobody has absolute knowledge. Absolute knowledge, absolute belief will be at 1. Now, I would argue, those of us who have absolute certainty in our beliefs sitting at 1, this gets very problematic. It's problematic relative to the evidence that's available to you. In other words, if you believe with absolute certainty that it's going to rain 3 days in a row, that is problematic because the evidence available to you would not allow you to objectively come to that sort of conclusion. For example, me on the other hand, let's say if 2 of my favorite tennis players are playing tomorrow, Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, and they're competing. To be more realistic, I might say that I believe with a 0.7 degree of certainty in the Bayesian sense that Nadal will win, just based on the fact that I know he's incredibly talented, yet he hasn't played for quite a while and his age. So 0.7. That is better than me saying, no, I just believe he will win. Absolutely. When we go into the territory of 1, of absolute certainty, that is when a belief becomes extreme and bad, because none of us will ever have all the evidence available to us. And yet that is exactly how some people have truly extreme beliefs. Despite the limited evidence that they have, they believe something absolutely. For example, flat earthers, despite the fact there's a wealth of information available that the world isn't flat, they still absolutely believe it is. If we can learn from Al-Farabi, then we can see that beliefs are bad when we commit ourselves without allowing room epistemically for error. And that is so important because realistically, none of us will ever have all the evidence and information available to us. We must always carry with us a potential room of error and recognize that we might be wrong in our beliefs. The good beliefs are the ones that are realistic towards the evidence that's available to us. The bad beliefs are the ones that we are so convicted on that we have dropped the epistemic search of contrarian information and evidence and just decided to stick to it without questioning it. And that's really when a belief becomes extreme and defective. And as I say this, perhaps you might start to recognize that you might have beliefs like that. Sometimes we believe in something emotionally. We just want to believe it. We rather believe it and sort of selectively pick evidence to sustain this belief. But we've got to recognize when we're doing that, when we have decided that this belief can't be wrong, that there's no room of error, that's when we have to be concerned and be more cautious, because that's when you have an extreme belief, and most likely a very bad belief, a belief that's not based on reality. And not enough of us really think about this. We don't approach beliefs in this way. To me, I think it's very much like cultivating a garden, in the sense that we've got a mental garden of all these various beliefs that truly influence us. As we wander through this garden, all these different beliefs we planted, they come at us and they influence us. And I like to think that all these beliefs that we've picked, that we've planted, they are based on us accumulating information about the world and being somewhat objective and rational in cultivating this garden, rather than becoming too overly emotional and choosing beliefs that are truly not good to have because we've become so attached to it that they truly have no place in this mental garden of ours. So next time when you are thinking about your beliefs, when you're believing about something, ask yourself, where does it lie on the spectrum from 0.1 to 1? If it is at 1 with absolute certainty, then you really have to think about it.